This is Al Fritsch for earthhealing.info. We are at the Fitchburg Furnace Historic Site. It's one of the great remnants, in fact the best in Kentucky, of the time when Kentucky was one of the major producers of iron. And now this is a big story. And of course, as we look at the beauty of the furnace that's behind us, we can understand that it's quite a complex issue because iron production goes back 4,000 years or more, and it has changed over a long period of time. When this was built, it was the best of its kind, and we could have gone into that too as to what that all means in the development of iron and its use in our industrial society. But we won't do that. We will just look mostly at what this remnant is and look at others that are in existence in Kentucky. There's 50 at least of these different relics from that period, and all of them are worth the while, but this is the best reproduced with over $1 million of repair work that had to be done, and others we will look at today too. But let us look at this one, which was originally called the Red River Furnace, because it was the Red River Iron Company that made it, and Frank Fitch was the one who was head of the company that put this on, and that's where the little community that formed itself around there of about 1,000 people in this valley, they tried to make the iron products and did so for 4 years from about 1870, after the Civil War, to 1873, when they had the great financial depression at that time. To what was once the Fitchburg Furnace community, a bustling settlement that made its living from the iron and wood resources of these mountains, Fitchburg had mills, shops, and homes for more than 100 families, all engaged in the smelting of iron ore. Fitchburg Furnace, reputedly the largest of its type in the world, was designed by Frank Fitch, and construction was completed by Sam Worthley in 1869. Thought of as the Red River Furnace, this structure represents the first attempt at improved furnace construction in this region. The twin stacks, named Blackstone and Chandler, were built in a solid rectangular mass of sandstone with a 40 by 80 foot base and 60 foot high. The stacks are 50 feet high and 12.5 feet across inside. The furnace used a steam-powered air blast and charcoal for fuel. The combined stacks had a capacity of 25 tons of pig iron per day, producing over 16,000 tons before it closed down in 1863. The cost of the furnace without machinery and steam engines was over $100,000, while the machinery and fittings brought the total to nearly $160,000. The Fitchburg Furnace flourished only briefly and began to swift decline during the great financial panic of 1863, caused by an over-speculation in western railroads. Since most of the iron smelted in this furnace was for the production of car wheels and rails for railroad construction, production slowed down for the lack of markets. The final blow, however, was the discovery of the rich iron ore beds in the Birmingham district of Alabama. Since this ore was of better quality and much more easily accessible than this area, competition was impractical, spelling the death of the local iron industry. Each furnace operation was normally was a self-contained community known as an iron plantation under the direction of an iron master, usually the owner. Under his direction, several types of skilled laborers took part in the overall operation. Miners dug the raw iron ore from the local sandstone formations. Limestone was quarried from local outcrops, and charcoal was produced from the abundant nearby timber resources to complete the charge necessary to produce quality iron. As a note, the entire county that we are in was almost completely denuded of all its forest in order to produce the charcoal that was needed for these operations. At the furnace itself, smelters were the skilled workers would cast the iron. Potters made the small castings after the molten iron was run out of the furnace, while gutter men had charge of the sand molds. Other laborers, often slaves, were the fillers who carried or wheeled the heavy baskets of ore, limestone, and charcoal to the furnace top. When a furnace had been erected and was ready to be blown in or go into production, a large wood fire was built in the stack. This was replenished from time to time until the furnace was completely dried out. When the furnace had been thoroughly heated by the fire in the hearth, it was ready for the first charge. All the furnaces in this area were operated by steam, being known as quarter furnaces, and when in operation used a coal blast. The iron in the form of pigs was hauled to transport to the Kentucky River, where they were shipped on flatboats to iron manufacturing plants in Cincinnati and other places. Like the other iron furnaces in this area, most of the iron from this furnace was used in the production of railroad car wheels and rails as the railroad expanded across the country. Besides Fitchburg, there are many examples in Kentucky of other remnant that we have of this iron industry. Now recall that this is ecologically not a very sustainable operation because it was taking so much of the trees in the nearby and surrounding areas to where the furnace was located. From a tourist viewpoint of seeing these things, one of the most accessible is that in Bath County, which is Clear Creek. It is only a matter of a couple of miles off of Interstate 64, and it is something that the Forest Service is upkeeping in a very good manner, and it's something that shows to the general public exactly what that industry was like in the 19th century. When we look at this, which is the cottage furnace, in the middle of almost nowhere, you might say, because it's miles from where people live, you'd say, how did 100 people come and work in this area? Well, remember, there was no trees here because they were all cut for charcoal, and they got stone from various outcroppings, which is sandstone, and that's what we see on the building here too. And also they had limestone from outcroppings, which we could see on the way back. There is an outcropping there. And also they got the timber, and that combination of four things with an ability to get out with the materials that you make, that is the pig iron, made this a prosperous operation from 1853 to 1879. And you'd say, my goodness, can they really get so much material together and do this? Before they had better ore types of places, yet the answer is yes. And this was a busy operation at one time. There are several stories told about this. This is one of the haunted places. We have both haunted houses and we have haunted working places. And this is one of the latter. And it was known that slaves had to be used in the very early days. in order to put the materials into the furnace. And so one of the young escapees, whose owner was a very cruel man, came, and the workers said, "Oh, sure, join us." And so he worked with them, lived as community, part of this community. And but one day his owner came by and found him here, and when when Ned saw his owner coming, he ran and jumped into the furnace, the red-hot furnace, and of course was cremated. But he was also a haunted place, with him coming many times to visit the people in the area. Also, there is a conclusion for this, not just that at the beginning, but this conclusion included Joel McKinney's son, who suddenly died. And he had been the hope of running the operation. And Joel stopped the operation in mid-functioning, and therefore there's iron down there, molten iron, that was left. The only place where you would find a thing like that. In other words, it was the end of an operation because the son had just passed away. This is Al Fritz from Earth Healing. Come back and see some of these remnant places that we have, 50 of them, here in Kentucky alone, when Kentucky was the third largest producer of iron materials. Come and see us at earthhealing.info.